Good morning, everyone. So today we've got to deal with two of the assignments, and I'm not sure which one to start with first. I think the assignment 13, the one about access, is quite short and quite simple. And the one about assignment 14 is much more complicated. Okay, so assignment 13 is about access. So this is about loans, visitors, requests for data, requests for images, requests for tissue samples or DNA. So anybody requesting access to your collections for research. And as we said in a really important aspect of the work that we do in the collections, the main function is for research, and the more people that use them for research or for other purposes, the more valuable those collections are. So it is very important to have people using the collections, using the data, and visiting, and the more work is done on the collections, it also improves them. So once they've been used for research purposes, there's more value added to them. Okay, so for this one, let me share my screen and find the right document. Okay, so for this assignment, there was a choice. So two options that you could choose from, or you can do both if you want extra points. So the first one is the first option was to develop any two workflows related to access. So we don't say which ones you must do. You can do any two different ones. So it can be for processing a loan. It can be for dealing with a visitor who's doing research on the collection. So documenting the steps from the time they arrive to the time they leave. All the steps involved. It can be for servicing a data request or an image request or a tissue sample access request. So just remember that every step in the process has to be documented, and you can use a kind of a workflow template or format. I think this one is done in PowerPoint, the one I've got here. And this is just an example from the webinar. So this is for processing an approved loan. So there might be a whole lot of steps to include for getting to the stage of having an approvement for a loan. Okay, so it's every step. What I haven't put here and what you must put is the time frame. So how long should this step take? So each step, how long should it take? 1 day, 2 days, 1 week, the maximum. And then also the person or the position that's responsible for each step. So what I did color code them. So each color would be a different person, and you could actually just do this kind of thing if you don't want to overcrowd your blocks. You can do it like this, and then just say which person is which color. So any method of doing it is fine, but just make sure that there is a person or position assigned to each of those steps. So some workflows might be quite short. This one, so this is, you get told to send these specimens out on loan to this person. And there's a whole lot of steps. You've got to go and get them from the collection. You've got to put a tracking slip where you've taken them from. The manual says that you should image all the specimens before they're sent out on loan. Maybe you don't, maybe you can't. And then confirm each specimen against your list. So you'd have to check the ones that you've taken out and tick them against the list, check that everything is there, that there's nothing extra, that there's nothing missing. So then somebody else has to also come in and verify the specimen. And then pack up the specimens, checking off each specimen as it's packed. Then include 1 copy of the loan invoice. So somebody's given you a loan invoice, a loan agreement, a loan inventory. So you put all those documents into your parcel. And then you file the documents. You put 1 copy of the loan invoice, loan agreement, and loan inventory in a plastic sleeve and attach it to the outside of the parcel. So every step is here: weighing the parcel, filling the weight on the forms, labeling your parcel with the sender's details, fragile stickers, label the scientific research specimens, check if you need a CITES label. And then you're going to dispatch it according to your standards. So that might be a courier. Or every step, you've got to think about every single step. So we want 2 of these workflows, and you can pick any 2 that you want to do. And then the other options, I think that's quite a simple one. It's really just about sitting down and thinking of all the steps that you do and checking that you're not missing anything. So in the manual, there are detailed steps for dealing with loans, for dealing with visitors. So also just check if what you currently do there's a gap in the steps. There's something else you should be doing. Okay, then the second option is to review existing documents in your institution for access. So all the documents related to access. So what this option said was that you need to look in the manual, and in the appendix, there's a list of all the documents that are needed related to access. And then you take that list and you put it into a table and you assess which documents you've got, which ones you've got, but they require revision, which ones exist and are fine but are not implemented, and which ones have not yet been developed. So it's really to do an assessment of the current documents. There's an action column should also be completed stating what actions are needed to address the gaps for each document. So there was a table provided in the guidelines for this assignment, and I got this list of documents from the manual and the appendix. So an access policy and process document for decision making related to access, internal appeals process document, visitor procedures document, a workflow document for loans, a workflow document for considering and servicing requests for images, workflow document for data requests, a standards document for packaging materials and packing of loans, standards document for facilities, equipment, consumables that should be made available for a visitor using the collection, rules for visitors, vision of material for destructive sampling or DNA analysis, a loans book or register, a register for data and digital images supplied, an access request form, a loan form or agreement, a receipt of return loan form, a collection movement slip, object movement slip, and then a material transfer agreement. So those are all the documents that it says in the manual you should have, just related to access to the collection. But you might not have it, you might not have all those documents, but the information, you might have other documents that include that information. So that's what you need to do. If you have a whole lot of policies and SOPs, go and look at them and see what they say about access. So I just made this up. So you might have a loans policy, you might have a visitor policy, and then you say, yes, we've got, it's not an access policy, but it's a visitor policy or a loans policy. They're separate documents, say the current status, when were they produced, when were they last reviewed. So, you know, what is the status of those documents? And then implementation. So are they implemented? And if you're uncertain, it probably means they're not fully implemented. So if they're being implemented, you work with them on your table every time you send out a loan. Every time a visitor comes, you've got your policy there so that you make sure you do everything properly. So is it fully implemented? Maybe it's partly implemented. Maybe you just don't know. And maybe it's not implemented. So then under the actions needed, you need to say, okay, well, they were last reviewed in 2012. We need to check them against what the manual says, and maybe we need to integrate them into a broader access policy. So that's the kind of review that we're asking you to do, is to look at what you've got, compare it to what you should have, and see what you need to do. So a process document for decision-making related to access. So do you know who makes all the decisions? Who approves, who signs off? What is the decision-making process? And that's important because, you know, for audit purposes, it shouldn't be just one person makes the decision, one person signs off, the same person does everything. There should always be some kind of a check or balance for audit purposes, and also for fairness. So there can be conflicts of interest for providing access, and so you need to ensure that doesn't come in when people request a loan. The person who has to authorize it is working on the same thing and might decline a loan request because they want to keep the material for themselves. So that sign-off is important. Maybe it's briefly covered in existing policies, but it's not explicit. And so maybe you need to develop that. So yeah, do you have an internal appeals process document? Maybe you've got nothing. So then your action would be to develop an internal appeals process. So if somebody's request is declined, can they appeal it? How do you deal with that kind of appeal? Visitor procedures document. So often you'll have something as part of a visitor policy that says, you know, what they must do. A workflow document. So that's what we're talking about. Maybe you've got keys, standard operating procedures. That's the same basically as a workflow. It's just step by step what must be done. And then if you look at that document, your SOPs or your workflows, you might say, well, we sort of implement it, but there's definitely some steps here that we skip. And then you could say we partially implement. So that's, you've got to work through everything, that whole list of documents, and look at what you've got. If you've got nothing, then it's probably easy. If you've got nothing or anything, then basically your assignment will not be very, it won't be very valuable, because basically you're going to just say nothing, 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 develop, develop, develop. So that's not a very meaningful assignment. So I suggest that if you've got no documents at all relating to access, nothing for visitors, nothing for loans, nothing for anything, then this is probably not a good assignment to select. Then rather do the workflow one. But I don't think that that's the case. I think nearly everybody's got something. Okay, so, you know, the thing about the loans book. So there was lots of debate about whether you need to keep a hard copy loan book or whether you can just have a table in your database where you record your loans. I think that it's now kind of acceptable to have a electronic version, but you need to do the printouts just as a permanent record of loans. Otherwise, it can be tampered with. So how do you know whether somebody doesn't just delete loans from that register, that electronic register? So it's fine to have to keep it in your database, but then every so often you need to do a hard copy printout and file that. That's the kind of thing that needs to be documented. I think nearly all organizations, all collection institutions have a loan form or an agreement. It's often something that's been used for many, many years, so just check. What does it actually say? What does it cover? It might cover quite a lot of different aspects of loan and not just be an agreement. A collection object movement record slip. So when you take specimens out the collection to send on loan, do you have a proper slip where you fill in information and you put it in there? I know where I've worked before, we've just used a scrap of paper and just scribbled on it that it was a loan to so-and-so and the date, and we stick that there. But it's better to have a proper piece of paper. And then do you have a material transfer agreement? That would be for if you're supplying tissue samples or DNA. It's not a loan, it's a transfer of material, so you're transferring it. And there should be a formal material transfer agreement. It's not a loan. And this, so what I said for the action here, if you don't have a material transfer agreement, there's lots of different templates that you can use to just check. So it's just a matter of working through what you've got, working through that list. We can share this document so that you can save time and just copy that first column into your table, so you don't have to recapture it like I did. And because I've got the Word document, so I'm quite lucky. I can just, of the manual, could just copy and paste. But we'll share this so that you don't have to spend time retyping it. Okay, let's see if there's any questions or any comments or any concerns about either of those assignments, the option 1, the workflows, or the assessment of documents. Anybody started this assignment yet?
Hi there, Michelle. Yes, I'm Louis from the CGS, and we started the assignment on assignment 13, specifically making the flow diagrams for loans and access to collections. We don't have any questions specifically yet. I think we're just finishing it up as well. We just have 1 or 2 more things to add into it, but I think we are more or less happy from what you've also shown that I think that we covered that one quite without any too big issues.
Okay, thanks. So I think my connection is a bit bad today for some reason. I think that it may be because of load shedding. I'm just going to see if I can change. Okay, so Louis and the Council for Geoscience people are working on the workflows. That's good. I think that it's a useful thing to do. Andrea?
Hi, Michelle. No, personally, I haven't yet started on assignment 13, but I think we'll also do the 2 workflows, and be one of the few collections that really have almost 0 documents and things for the table. But we'll use your template and just try and fill in, and obviously then see what we'll still have to do. But that will be a dead loss then for us, that this option B.
Okay. All right, thanks, Andrea. So I don't think that you're very much alone with not having that very long list of documents. And I think it'll be, if you've got almost nothing, like I said, I don't think it's really going to be very worthwhile trying to do the assignment. But for deciding which documents need to be developed, it's obviously useful for that. Okay, let's have some input. Anybody else thinking about which of those options they'll do? So, so now let's see where I think Sanby will have quite a lot of policy documents and SOP documents for visitors and for loans. I think even for images and for data. I remember there was quite a lot of documentation for SANB.
Yes, Michelle. Morning, everyone. Yes, Michelle. They are your policy. What is it? I'm sorry, I'm looking at it on the other screen on this side. Your E2s and E3s and B2s. So we've done this, right? We did the assignment. I don't know how Pume feels about this. She was the lead on the assignment, so she's busy having a look as well. She's here. She's online. Pume, maybe she wants to comment more. But what we did was we did the reds. Remember, I told you about the reds where we identify the gaps. So we've done everything, but that last column for actions needed, right? Ours is chock-a-block full. So I don't know, maybe Pume will want the document just to compare how you did it versus how we did it, because I see you named exactly what the document would be for, whereas when we had document type or standard press, your first column, we just wrote 4 loans. This is what speaks to that, for example, is policy B4. See, we did it like that. So it still answers the thing, but I don't know if you would want it specifically the way that you did it. I don't know. So yeah, I don't know. For me, am I phrasing the question correctly? But Michelle, you can answer that for me at the very least, because I'd also like to know. But then maybe Pume and Minoli would have something else to say.
Okay, thanks, Elisiwe. So, all right, let's just take that question from you about, okay, so what you basically said was documents for loans.
Yes.
You listed all of those that you've got. So I think the important thing is specific aspects of loans. So for example, the decision making for authorizing. You know what I mean? So you might have a loans policy, you might have a loans SOP, but does it include the decision-making process and sign off? So it may be okay what you've done, but you'd have to check that the aspects that I've listed are considered when you do the review. Yeah. So I mean, if you've already work, it might not be worth undoing that and redoing it, but just to go and check whether you've considered the different aspects. Okay.
I think you've answered me. Yeah.
Okay. Mpumi, do you want to come in? If you've been working on this assignment? We can't hear you, so you've unmuted, but we can't hear you. No, I can't hear her.
No, yeah, she normally does have mic problems. But maybe if you don't mind, and the thing is, Minoli is also working from home today, so sometimes the two of them will sit together so that she can use Minoli's mic. But Bume, maybe you can type and the question can be attended to maybe at a later stage, but please do. Personally, Michelle, thank you. I think you've answered my question in the sense that we need to get a little bit more detailed, because loans, it wasn't even answering then each specific aspect. It was just that loans is covered in this policy, and then having gone through the policy, these are the actions that we feel we still need to take. So we answered all the, the tabs at the top, they all filled in, but then we'd like have a heck of a lot of maybe actions needed like at the end. So definitely not as segregated, like each specific one like you did. And so I'm answered in that that would be a better way to go about it, because you are correct. There are specific aspects to just loans. And so what document speaks to each one. So for me, I'm sorted. Thanks.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. So let's hear from anybody. Nobody else has started this one. Henri, you don't have a mic, but you can type in the chat. If you've got a hold of all the SANB policies for loans, and if if you're just going to do workflows. So you can tell us that. Let's hear from Mandisa. You want to let us know what you're thinking of doing. If you haven't started, which one do you think you will be doing?
Hi everyone. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
We haven't started with this assignment, but I think that's the first part of it. Like the workflow would work much better for us, because I think we previously, or I think it was assignment 1 or one of the previous assignments, we did like not in a graph sort of way, but we did do like a workflow for some of the forms. So I think that would be much easier to do. And I think we would understand it much better if we do the workflow.
Okay. Who are you working as a group?
Yes, it's me, Matabaro and Nilisiwe.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah. Okay. Good. Thank you for that. So Anne's struggling. Her PC is so slow. We're gonna have to speak to Sandy and tell them to buy you a new PC with a microphone, Anne. All right. Anybody else want to chip in here? Sanela Siwe?
Sorry, Michelle. It's just it's me again. So what Mpumi did was to send me voice notes, okay, so that I can ask on her behalf. So the one thing she would like to state, and I'm sorry, Mpumi, I did forget. She wanted to say that so besides this, we also did do the workflows. I forgot, we did. So we did both. So we've done the workflows and we've done this. So yeah, sorry about that for me. But then on the second part, she said, it's a question now. The question is, given that the whole loans process is handled by her, for the workflows now, would you want her for each specific part, because it's not like the area. So would you want her for each and every singular block to say that it's done by her, it's done by her, it's done by her, which she didn't see the need for? Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I think that might be quite a common situation where there's one person who does every step. So obviously you're not going to have to write it in each block. You can just put a line at the bottom so that there's, whatever that post is responsible for all steps. You don't have to put it in each block. You can just make a note that it's only one person who, whatever that position is, that is responsible for everything. Okay. So great that you've done both options. That's good. All right. Anybody else want to raise anything about this assignment? I think the second option is maybe a bit more tricky, reviewing documents or trying to figure out what you've got. Might be a little bit more challenging, but they should be fine. And I'll ask Pulu to put this example document onto the website, so or circulate it so people have got that.